Hello and welcome to the Buenos Días Oxnard podcast. Join us as we invite special guests to talk about topics that are important to everyone who lives, works, and does business in Oxnard.
Hi, I'm Danya. How can I help you?
Hi, I'm looking for the Public Works Department. I want to discuss the condition of our roads.
Oh, you want to talk about the roads? It'll take a minute. Let me go out there.
Okay, and who would be the director of Public Works?
The director is Michael Wolfe. The best way to reach him is through the Public Works email address, publicworks@oxnard.org.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so the email address was publicworks@oxnard.org. Sent.
Hello everyone, my name is Manuel Herrera. I'm with Citizens for a Better Oxnard. And you know, one of the hottest topics on Citizens has to do with our roads. What's the condition of our roads? Are they being repaired? Why aren't they being repaired? What's taking so long? So I wanted to get the answers to all of your questions. So what I did is I went searching to see which department and which person we need to speak to. So I was told that it would be Public Works Department, and the Director of Public Works is Michael Wolfe. So what I decided to do was reach out to the Public Works Director, Michael Wolfe, and see how the city is handling the huge task of paving our streets and alleys after years of deferred maintenance. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Michael Wolfe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, let's start by talking a little about Michael Wolfe. So a little birdie told me that you were raised in Oxnard. So you're a local boy, right?
Yeah, my family has certainly a long history in this area. My mom graduated from Hueneme High School.
Oh, wow.
My grandparents lived in Port Hueneme for a long, long time. I was born on the base. I was born on the Navy base. My parents bought a house in South Oxnard. They were close to Hueneme High School. I went to Eel Green, I went to Hueneme, graduated,
Awesome.
Should I say the year? Graduated 1989. Yeah, so Oxnard's my hometown. So.
Awesome. Well, that's good because, you know, one of the things people say a lot is, we need people that are from here. We need people that, well, and you are, right? And obviously, I know the feeling because I too was born and raised in Oxnard. I often tell people I was born, raised, and hope to die in Oxnard, just not hopefully
soon,
anytime
right? Yeah.
soon, right? So let me start off by first asking you, what exactly does a Public Works Director do?
Well, let me start with the Public Works Department, if that's okay. Kind
Sure.
of with all the different areas that we cover, and then obviously as the director, it would be my responsibility to plan and execute all those things associated with our department. So we have water and wastewater, our two utilities. We also have solid waste, which are trash. Public Works also includes another enterprise fund, which is the golf course operations. So we oversee the golf course, River Ridge. And then we have multiple other divisions like engineering. We have parks and landscape maintenance. We have streets, fleet. I'm probably missing a few here, special districts. So we actually we have our transportation staff as well. So we do most of the maintenance when it comes to the city's rights-of-way or the streets and the sidewalks. We deal with most of the traffic signals and the maintenance thereof, the signs, the striping. We also take care of all the city's facilities and all the city's vehicles. So we have a pretty big department. In fact, I think it's the largest department in the city, and we maintain a lot of stuff.
Okay, awesome. We see a lot of complaints about potholes and bad roads, but we've also seen an increase in pothole repairs and street repairs. So how are things improving?
Yeah, I appreciate the question because I feel like things are improving. Last fiscal year, we repaired over 5,000 pothole locations, which is an increase from previous years. One of the things that we've had recently, good news, bad news, with all the rain. That's good news, right? With the water resources and the
Right.
drought. I think what most people may not correlate with the rain is that it increases the number of potholes, right? The asphalt and water they don't mix very well. And so anywhere that water can get inside the asphalt into the street starts to create areas for it to really break down, and that's a big component of what creates potholes. And so we had a lot of rain last year, which means a lot more potholes, but we did about a little over 5,000 locations last year. We also received 2 specific vehicles. They're called patch trucks. We received them a couple of months ago in July. They've been on order for quite a long time, about a year and a half, unfortunately, for the supply chain delays. But these are vehicles specifically designed and used to fix potholes. They're very efficient in the fashion that which they can do that. So we just started using them about a month ago. So we anticipate actually getting to a lot more pothole repairs this year than we did in previous years.
Now, quick question on that. Can this machine that you're talking about, can that repair potholes during the rain?
So we don't typically do what's called a hot mix pothole repair in the rain. Normally we do what's called a cold mix, so it's even more temporary. So during rain events, obviously exposing our employees to that element in terms of traffic safety is very, very difficult. So normally what would happen in that scenario is we'd go out with a cold patch. It's actually a cold mix of asphalt. That would get placed first, and then we'd come back later after the rain event and then repair it with a hot mix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask is because I remember one day somebody posted on Citizens, they said, hey, we just saw some city people repairing some potholes in the rain. Well, that's pretty silly. Well, then when you do the research, it's like, yeah, you can actually do that, with modern technology.
Yeah, so the point there is the pothole only get bigger if you don't address it, right? And so our point at that time would be to try to mitigate the spread of that pothole. So we would use cold patch in that fashion, especially if it's in a very specific area within the travel lane where vehicles are constantly going over it, where it becomes a safety issue. So we want to get out there as fast as possible. Sometimes it does rain in Southern California, right? And sometimes it rains for multiple days. So at that point, we would sometimes send out a crew just to do the cold patch.
Okay, cool. Now, so that's great news about the potholes. So what about some of our main roads? They need repairs beyond potholes.
Right. So you mentioned it in the very beginning about deferred maintenance, and that's the key component that we're trying to address is many years, and I'll probably say decades of deferred maintenance that's occurred. Our last published pavement management report says we have over $200 million worth of deferred maintenance still. And our streets are actually, if you look at the assets that the city has, our streets are typically, a city's streets are typically the largest asset that they have. So there's a lot of work to be done with the funding that the council has authorized in the last couple of fiscal years. They have prioritized paving of streets as a priority. And so it's a big undertaking. It's going to take us some time, but I think the fact that the council has really focused in on providing funding for street repairs is going to be good for us.
Okay. So how do you approach such a large-scale need for street improvements?
Yeah. So I wish I could do them all, right? I wish I could just go out there and snap my fingers and we would do all the streets at one time. As you can imagine, with like I said, $200 million worth of deferred maintenance, it takes time. And so it's a process, right? It's a process of evaluating, the things that we have to do, what sequence of events. Some people say, well, just go fix the worst streets. Just go out and fix the worst ones. And I think part of that is you need to understand that asphalt doesn't degrade in a linear fashion. It degrades in an exponential fashion. Meaning that if you just try to approach and fix the worst streets only, you'll never catch up. Because that exponential degradation, you can never keep up with that pace, right? And so that's why we try to address this in sort of two fashions, right? We look at the pavement condition index, and we try to make sure that we are addressing street repairs in the right fashion at the right time. And we do that in a mixture of different corrective and preventative maintenance works.
And what's good about this interview is that, a lot of people don't know how things work, and we assume, like what you just said, that, well, why can't we fix the worst streets first, or this or that? I mean, there's literally a rhyme and reason to everything you guys do, and we don't know a lot of that. I remember when I first got involved in the community, I was all gung-ho with, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And then when I educated myself, it's like, oh, so that's why, so.
Yeah, part of that's to try to stretch the dollars, right? We're really trying to make sure we stretch every single dollar that we get, right? And so if we're only doing the worst streets, if you can imagine the cost to repair a street at a very low pavement condition index is somewhere between 6 to 10 times the amount it costs us to do preventative work. So we should try to keep and strive to keep all of our work in the preventative work side of the house. So for every dollar that we spend in preventative maintenance, it costs us 6 to 10 times more in corrective. So that's why if you just chase the worst streets, you're spending it $6 and $10 every time instead of the $1 that you could be spending on some other streets to get it to last longer.
Wow. And see, that's something we, the public, don't know. So now you mentioned PCI, or the Pavement Condition Index. So most people, including myself, don't know what that is. So can you explain that?
Yeah, unfortunately, us engineers, we like to use a lot of technical terms, right? So you could think of Pavement Condition Index as a scale. And that scale goes from 100 being a brand new street, and then it goes all the way down to 0. And so the way this is done is you would go out and you would do inspections of street segments. We take a look at, does it have potholes? Does it have cracking? Does it have rutting? Whatever those deteriorations that may happen. And each one of those gets scored, and then we actually put it into a program that's called Street Saver. And then that Street Saver takes all those inputs and then gives us a score for each segment. So again, 100 being a brand new street and 0 being sort of the worst street. So that's how we do grades for streets.
So it's basically a report card for streets, right?
Exactly.
So if that's the case, how does Oxnard score?
So Oxnard's current PCI, so the last officially reported PCI was 66.
Okay.
That's up from 63 in, I think, 2019. So we're making progress towards a better number. I will say that I looked up recently the state's average. So the state puts out an average of PCI across all cities and counties, and that 2021 report was a statewide average of 66. So Oxnard is right on the state average of 66.
Oh, okay. Now, the city council's goal was 70 PCI, right?
Yeah, so right before I got here, I've been here 2 years. Right before I got here, staff from Public Works took a recommendation to council to set a goal, and that goal is 70. And that's a really great goal, right? And to me, that should be kind of a minimum goal, not a maximum goal, right? And because as you can think of a curve, a pavement curve, 60 starts to get towards that place where it starts to fall off the cliff, if you will. So the higher we get, the better we are.
Okay. Now, I'm always hearing people comparing Camarillo and Thousand Oaks roads to Oxnard's roads. And yet, we have a higher sales tax, right? So people say, well, what's happening here? Why aren't our roads better than their roads? So what's behind that point of view?
Yeah, I always find it interesting to try to compare cities. It's in my opinion, never truly an apples to apples comparison. There's a lot of complexity behind each city. Cities do things differently. Oxnard's my 4th city I've worked for. I've worked for 4 different municipalities as a direct employee. 2 of those had a higher PCI in the 70s and 80s, and Oxnard is a city that has a PCI similar to a previous city of about 66. I will say that there's some similarities when you take a look at cities that have PCIs in the 60s, and the first thing that usually pops out is the age of the city, right? As you can imagine, just like your home or your house or your body, as you get older, it costs more to maintain.
Well, not mine.
Yeah,
but-
perfect. Yeah, but I think Oxnard was incorporated in 1903. I'm hoping I got that one right. So 1903, I think it was. And then you can look at cities of Camarillo and Thousand Oaks. They were incorporated in the 60s. So you're talking about much newer city in terms of infrastructure, and so that really is a difference. The other thing I look at if I want to compare cities is what's the volume that they have to maintain, right? And Oxnard, I think our last reported amount of lane miles is over 1,000, about 1,035. And when you look at a city like Camarillo, they're in the 400s in terms of lane miles. You look at the city of Thousand Oaks, they're in the 700s. So they have less streets to maintain. So again, very difficult to do a apples to apples comparison when you don't have the same volume, you don't start with the same age. So I always hesitate to do an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, and again, see, this is why we're doing this, so that the people will know, the facts. And there's a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of people guessing as why this happens, why that happens, why isn't this happening. But the whole purpose of this is to, get the word out, let people know.
Yeah, another thing that I would say is that you also need to take a look at the mixture of vehicles that routinely go on streets. So similar to other agencies I work for that have PCIs in the 60, Oxnard has a lot of buses, right? We have a lot of public transportation, which is a good thing. We have trucks, truck traffic. We have larger vehicles. We have a larger volume of vehicles because of the industries and the commercial components that we have here. So that also affects your pavement condition index, right? So cities that are more like bedroom community cities that don't have buses and trucks, they don't have to deal with the ramifications of those heavier vehicles.
Okay. And with the help of Measure E, that's going to really help us out, right?
Yeah, so Measure E, a couple years ago was approved, and the last couple of years, council has been able to allocate significantly more funding to pavement maintenance.
Yeah, because in my research, I found that right now, Oxnard is trying to catch up. We have over $200 million in deferred maintenance.
Yeah. So again, that's goes back to limited funding in many years. Like I said, if paving degraded linearly, that would be easier, but it doesn't. It degrades exponentially, so it's very difficult to catch up once you're kind of behind the curve there.
Okay. So what are the different types of street restoration activities that the public sees on city streets?
We talked about potholes, so that's really kind of a temporary repair. The other two sort of big buckets big buckets in terms of categories, corrective maintenance and preventative maintenance. So like preventative maintenance would be things like crack sealing and slurry seal. We do things like what's called a thin maintenance overlay or a micro surfacing. Those are all preventative, and you typically do those when your PCI is in this 70s, 80s, 90s, sometimes in the 60s. And that allows you to extend the life of that pavement for very little dollars in terms of the cost. The corrective maintenance are things like when we put another layer of asphalt on top of the existing. So we call that an overlay. Sometimes we'll go in there, depending on how the existing asphalt is, we'll go in there and we'll remove some of it and then put new asphalt back. So that's sometimes called a grind and overlay. And then we have a traditional full depth repair. Like sometimes you actually have to get, I'll pause for a second, the asphalt is only the stuff that you see. Below that, there's still structural integrity. There's still base material that gets compacted. So sometimes over a long period of time, or maybe from water intrusion, that subbase also gets affected. So you have to go all the way down, remove all the asphalt, and really get into the subgrade. So sometimes we call that a full depth removal. So those are kind of the different categories.
Okay. Another concern, another assumption is that the city neglects the south side and only focuses on the north side. So how would you address that?
Yeah, that's a little unfortunate that's a thought process. It's not really what I've seen since I've been here. I have seen, and some of this predates me, but I have seen projects in Bryce Canyon North, Bryce Canyon South, those neighborhoods. That's South Oxnard, very close to where I used to live. I have seen, we did work in Redwood neighborhood. We've done work on Saviors. So I mean, all those are in South Oxnard. I know we've done work on Saviors itself. We're doing alley work, near Pleasant Valley and Cloyne Street. That's an active project. So those are all South Oxnard. Council just awarded on Tuesday night. They awarded a project for Hueneme Road, paving of Hueneme Road. That's a $2.3 million project. So again, all those are in South Oxnard. So I would say, it's unfortunate that thought process is out there, but that's not what I'm seeing. Yeah,
and actually, I personally went and witnessed some of the work being done in South Oxnard. So again, I know I've said this a million times. I'll say it a million more times. It's all about getting the information out to the people so that they don't continue to spread these rumors. The city is not neglecting the South Side, so. This city belongs to everybody, and if all the city looks good, we all look good. So they don't just cater to one side. So now, with your answer, what criteria does the city use to determine which street segments are the next ones to get worked on?
Yeah, like I said before, I wish we could just do all of them, right? Yeah,
Right.
that would be the best. Obviously, we have to make a decision, right? And usually that's a data-driven decision, but based initially on funding, right? So like this fiscal year, council authorized a little shy of $21 million. So I think $20.8 million is what council authorized for paving this fiscal year. And so we use that as a starting point, obviously. And then we have our Street Savers, which is our program. But we use criteria such as PCI. That's a big one, right? You can think that would be a big one. We use criteria also. So one of the big things that we've switched over to since I've been here is, where do we spend most of our time doing pothole repair? Because if we repair those streets, if we repave those streets, then our maintenance team actually can go other places. So we use how many times we go out there and do pothole repair as one of our criteria. We use, are we getting ready to do a utility project? What's the volume of traffic out there? So there's a lot of criteria that we use to make recommendations for streets. And as I mentioned before, we're trying to stretch those dollars. So it's not always about doing the worst streets. We want to do some preventative work as well. So we will be doing work on streets that look a lot better than other ones because we're stretching that dollar, right? So we may go out and do a crack seal or a slurry seal on a street that is a much higher PCI, but we're trying to get to this point where a majority of our work is preventative maintenance rather than corrective maintenance, and that's all about saving dollars. Right now, until we catch up, it's hard for us to do that. So what we try to do is define about 25% of our work in any one fiscal year. We define it as preventative work so that we can stretch those dollars. But until we catch up, I mean, that ratio should be flipped. Like, we should be doing 25% corrective work and 75% preventative work so that we can stretch the dollars. But until we catch up with the deferred maintenance, we're kind of opposite of that ratio.
Do residents have an input on where street improvements are scheduled in Oxnard?
So as I mentioned, one of the key components that we'll use to recommend to council what streets is the amount of potholes that we repair. So I would strongly suggest residents use our 311 app and report those potholes. That'll obviously let us know where we can address the pothole repairs, and then we'll add that to our selection process for streets. We'll be taking and have taken pavement management recommendations to council, so I strongly suggest when we do that, which we're anticipating at the beginning of next calendar year, to come to the council meeting and voice their opinions and recommendations. So yeah, there's opportunities for input.
You know, one of the great things about the 311 app is that more and more people are becoming familiar with it, and even to the point where, like on Citizens for a Better Oxnard, somebody will ask a question like, hey, how do I report this pothole? And before I can even answer, members are answering, hey, this is what you do.
Perfect.
Go to
Yeah.
311, you know.
Perfect, yeah.
So all this is working. You know, we all work together. You do your part, we do our part. You know, I keep telling people, you know, this city belongs to all of us. Don't just leave it up to the city officials to do their part and you just sit there and critique. You know, get informed, find out how things work. You know, there's tools available,
Yeah.
the 311 app, you know.
And we can't have eyes everywhere from a you know city staff member standpoint. So yes, please report that. The more eyes that we get out there, the more that we know where we have issues, the better it is for us as well.
Okay. We keep hearing about the new Aaron Starr lawsuit regarding bonds and how this will affect street restoration. Can you explain that? Is this what Measure E and city taxes are supposed to pay for?
So I'll answer the first part of the question first. I would say a very traditional way for local municipalities to fund larger projects is bonding. That's a pretty standard process. Happens in a lot of municipalities, you know, where you have a very large upfront cost. You bond for that, and then you pay for that bond over multiple years. That's a pretty standard process. The lawsuit is putting that process on hold right now. So the council had approved us bonding for, I want to say, about $14 million worth of street repairs. And with the lawsuit, we're not able to bond for it. So the council had to find staff recommendation, council approval of a different funding source. So we weren't able to bond. And so when you have to look at other funding sources, it really competes with other things. You know, that funding could have been used for more senior programs, could have been used for more police or fires, you know, public safety. That funding could have been used for some other services that are as important, more important than street repair. But because we can't bond, now the council has to make that tough decision because that bonding funding stream is not there right now.
So I myself like analogies. So when I heard about this Aaron Starr lawsuit and everything, so I thought to myself, okay, so it's kind of like if, let's say I'm running my household and I have, you know, money in my account and I want to buy a car. But let's say the car is, you know, $60,000. I may have the cash to pay for the car, but wouldn't it be wiser for me to instead finance it and not put all my money at that? Isn't that kind of what's happening here, where is he trying to get the city to use up all their cash? And because my knowledge of this is that's how, like you said, that's how cities do it. You know, you bond some of it, you pay cash for some of it. You know, I mean, you know, you guys know what you're doing, and then you got people on the outside trying to tell you how to do your job.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Mr. Starr, so I don't know if I could answer the second part of your question. But what I will say is when we have a huge amount of deferred maintenance, the more that we can bite off and upfront, the better that is, right? So the more that we can tackle that $200 million worth of deferred maintenance all at once, then you can start doing your corrective maintenance, or I'm sorry, you can start doing your preventative maintenance, which is much cheaper. So the idea of bonding for street maintenance, again, is not a new concept. It's something that's out there. So the analogy of a car is similar, even if it's a $30,000 car or $60,000, whatever value that car is if you can pay for a lot of it up front, right, then maybe you can have lower payments going forward, right? That's also a part of that concept. But the idea here is to try to tackle as much of that $200 million of deferred maintenance.
I used the $60,000 car reference because of inflation.
Yeah, no, and I mentioned it at council the other night. I mean, inflation obviously plays a big role into how much we can pay, right? I mean, we're estimating projects potentially 2 years in advance when we do our 2-year CIP. You know, 2 years ago, if you just look at gasoline 2 years ago compared to today. So inflation is a huge issue.
Yeah, and also, am I correct to say that a lot of the planning of the fixing of the roads is done years prior, right?
Yeah, so we have a 5-year plan, kind of a rolling 5-year plan. If actually it's on our website. But yeah, we want to be as far in front of that as possible. Obviously, we need to be flexible in case things change. Maybe a development's coming and we don't want to pave in front of a new development. Maybe we have to do a water line replacement, so we don't want to pave first and then replace the water line. So yeah, we plan that out as far in advance as possible, but we're flexible in terms of being able to change that if necessary.
Yeah. Anything else the community should know about?
Well, I did mention that we do have stuff on our website, so I would suggest if they're really interested in our capital projects, which is what we're talking about in terms of paving, I would go to our website, which is oxnard.org/capital-projects, and they'll be able to find a lot of this information on there.
Awesome. Well, look, we could literally spend hours, if not days, discussing our roads and what it takes and, et cetera, et cetera. But we try to just tackle the issue by, again, speaking with you, getting your feedback. So for everyone out there, this isn't going to answer all your questions, but this is a start. So don't forget that you got to do your part too. You got 311. You can always email the city council, the public works department, etc. So because the best citizen is an informed citizen. So that's what this is all about, just trying to inform the public. So, Mr. Wolfe, I thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man. There's a lot of roads out there. But thank you for taking the time to speak with me and to answer the questions that the citizens have.
You're welcome. Thank you.